UX UI design, also referred to as product design, are the visual and interaction elements of a product. It's all around us. Websites, apps, cars, even insurance companies use it. So how do you become one? What's the process? What's the weekly hours? Well, that is answered in today's conversation with Marvin, a UX UI designer with over 10 years of experience who teaches a course in this field, was a TEDx speaker, and a current freelance product designer.
What's really interesting about you was that before going to product design, you were a software engineer. And that's really cool to me because typically like UX UI designers had to have like this sort of really good relationship with like developers because, you know, they design it and they're the ones who actually kind of create it. And there has to be a really good relationship because sometimes some things can't work out. So it's pretty cool seeing that you learned more of like the developer side of things and then you dove into design, make you really kind of like be the best of like both worlds, which is pretty cool. So like looking at your LinkedIn, I saw that you worked at a student internship at this like energy company, and then you went on to the company SAP. Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah, SAP.
Gotcha. Yeah, SAP, and it was like a software company. Can you just like talk about a little bit about like your experience there, what the company does, like its mission, and what you did there?
Oh yeah, I mean SAP is probably one of the biggest. I think it's the biggest German industry or company that's doing like software development and everything when it comes down to enterprise software, especially accounting or HR software. I mean, I think there's some kind of SAP software in like every company. So those guys build that kind of software, and they also have like different innovation programs in the sports and health tech in industry and stuff like that. And it was pretty great. So their scholarship it was kind of a scholarship program. It's like pretty structured, and we just like had a very cool general experience and introduction to the company, what they're doing. We also had like our first coding workshops there because they also invented like a own programming language called ABAP. I think they don't use it right now anymore. They're more like, they use more like modern web tools nowadays. But it's super cool because it's like, it's its own little world. And that was also one of my first really professional experiences when it comes to software development. Before that, I was just like heavily into gaming, and I really wanted to build my own computer games. That's why I've taught myself super complicated programming languages like C++ and stuff like that. Actually, it was pretty clear for me already in school that I was like, okay, I need to study computer science or something like that because I want to build my own software.
Huh. Oh, that answered my second question. That's pretty cool that video games really inspire you to be to like get into like software engineering and work for this type of company. And later on, you kind of worked at this insurance company. I think translated like English would be like SV Saving Banks Insurance. Can you like just talk a little bit about what you did there, and also like the transition of like leaving SAP? Like what made you want to like move on to a different company?
Yeah, so basically after high school, I've decided to do my bachelor's degree in computer science. And we in Germany, we have one particular university that's doing like a super special program when it comes to studying experience. So it's kind of a dual study track. And the special thing there is like you doing a full degree bachelor. So no questions asked there. But the semester is split into two halves, and you partner up with a company for the 3-year period of your bachelor's degree. And that is pretty cool because for 3 months, you are at the university covering the theory. And then for 3 months afterwards, you're directly in the company, working in teams and getting real life experience. And I think especially for computer science, that is super cool. And what I did basically there, the company was super great. It was a small company. They're doing like all the IT infrastructure and all the software development thing for a lot of insurance companies in Germany. So that was a super cool experience, especially insurance is like a super tech heavy focused product. And even in that time, it was like around 2013, there was so much room for improvement and innovation in that hub. So that was super great. And after my studies there, I actually started there also as a software engineer, but it was, I have to say, it was pretty boring because I found myself debugging SQL queries from like the 1990s. So that wasn't really a super cool experience. But the cool thing is, I was offered there a super unique chance to build their first in-house innovation lab. So a super small unit that was dedicated to build full-time innovation in insurance products, super tech focused. And that was pretty cool, and I really liked it. So actually in that company, I then got the most dustiest desk in the corner of the company. And the CEO was like, okay, impress me and do some stuff. And there I was, knowing nothing but only software engineering, and did some things about insurance. And I thought like, okay, what is the best way to impress people with insurance and technology? And for me, the best way was not presenting PowerPoint slides or complicated concepts. For me, it was building products. And that was basically also what brought me into product design then in the end, because I really fall in love with that interface to the user. So really how the user interacts with a product, how he perceives the product, what he does understand, maybe what he does not understand and stuff like that. So I think that's a super important approach. And that opened so many doors in my career.
Yeah, I kind of like noticed like about like the product design part, because I think one thing I noticed about the company is that there's this word called like insurtech, and it was just like brand new to me. Like it's something about like kind of like modern technology and insurance. And I was like, that's like it's just weird to me, because I'm not that big into finance, and it was just like such a weird like thing that I had to like look into.
Oh yeah.
Like, did you talk about like insurtech as part of like what I guess when you made your sort of products and making the user understand what like stuff like that was? Because it was kind of like, it was confusing to like, I guess when I looked it up on like on Wikipedia to see like what it meant, but I still didn't get it. So it was pretty it was really interesting.
It's pretty cool. So actually insurtech is a pretty complicated topic, because the whole insurance world is basically driven by regulatories and policies and laws and stuff like that. But I think especially because of that case, there is so much room for technical innovation. So for example, you have to imagine when you want to do a life insurance in Germany, a lot of the times, or in the last 20 years, you get like 1,000 sheets of papers with forms and stuff like that you have to fill out by hand. And then you give it to some insurance person, and they're like, okay, what is the risk of that guy? Okay, he's doing like bungee jumping. That's a high risk. Oh, but he's also vegan. Maybe that's a lower risk and stuff like that. And that was all done by hand. So, for example, an insurtech approach would be, how can we automate that? And maybe how can we also analyze and classify all of those users automatically without this heavy load of all these special knowledge workers there who are like analyzing all the papers, and where can we use their resources maybe in a better way to have like really that close relationship to our customers. So what insurtech in the end is doing actually is like it frees up resources for other parts of the whole business.
Yeah, that makes a little more sense now, because I saw that like AI was involved in it. So I'm assuming to automate it, you also have involved AI into it. Yeah, and that just makes it more complex. So just like its own, I guess, type of video for itself. So then, as you talked about,
but
there,
it's so funny. It's so funny because because there are so many parts in that like insurance world or insurance process. When you see like a customer lifetime journey, where you really can automate things. For example, just if you have a damage on your car. In the old times, you really had to call a guy, and he came over to your house and was like, okay, let's see what the car is doing and stuff like that. And nowadays you can just take a picture, and then AI in the background analyzes the damage and sees, okay, maybe if that damage is underneath 2,000 euros or $2,000, you automatically get paid. So all the processes are a lot faster, and you really need less resources. And that change is primarily driven by technology and technological improvements.
That's cool. It just makes like the experience so much more easier. It's just more comfortable. And it's pretty cool like that's kind of like where it started, like as you described, like a pretty like boring like job, but that also kind of brewed in your interest in product design. And part of like working in product design, you had this kind of I guess you could describe as a part-time gig at Memorizely. And Memorizely, like when I first saw the boot camp, it just, I've never seen anything like it before, because I would always like, if I looked up like UX UI design stuff, I would see like certifications and courses, and it was just like the simple like watch this like long video and just take notes on it and then complete this quiz and just keep going like that. And then you learn about UX UI design and that'd be it. And when I looked at like what the bootcamp does and stuff, I was like, this is really cool. So like, I guess that was like your first time actually like kind of having a sort of like teacher position. Were there any challenges that you faced while trying to teach at Memorizely?
Yeah, of course. I mean, being a teacher is, I think I'm still in the learning process of being a teacher. And I'm so super grateful, especially for the Memorizer team, that I every day have so many great teachers around me who are still teaching me stuff. So yeah, I'm basically a lifelong learner. But yeah, teaching is hard. Teaching is hard. Memorizing it is really fun because we have such a special vibe, and all the students, they're so lovely. And I really appreciate the classes there because the atmosphere is like, it's so chilled. And it feels like in my everyday life, when everything is super stressed besides full-time work or friends and family and other things, Memorizely and the classes especially, they feel like that bubble. And for that 2-hour time window, nothing can stress you out and everything is super good. But yeah, especially, I mean, from the content side, everything's actually clear because I have several years of experience in the UX and UI world, but there are several things that are also new to me. So before teaching at Memorizely, I also did the UX UI bootcamp with them. And so I was kind of familiar to the whole architecture and the vibe and the structure of the class. But yeah, there are several special cases in classes. For example, suddenly the file gets destroyed because maybe me or a student deletes something and they can't undo it or stuff like that. So when you have to react pretty spontaneously, it's super important to not stress out and be really calm, and also sometimes say, okay, we'll make a 5-minute break here. I try to recover everything and then let's go back to the normal structure. But yeah, that's a continuous learning process. But teaching is definitely fun. And I'm super grateful also to help so many people out there because they really appreciate it. And yeah, I think it's a cool approach, especially with our bootcamp.
And that's really cool. And like during your years of like learning about product design, is there like a project that you're most proud of that you would like to talk about? Something that really, I guess, changed your understanding of design and you learned some new things and you're just really proud of that project?
Yeah, wow. I mean, there is so many great projects in the past. I think one project what I'm really proud of was like my first freelancing project. It's a health tech based startup in Munich, here in Germany. And what they're like doing, it's called onv.health. And what those guys are basically doing is they combine different health resources. So let's say, for example, you have an Apple Watch, an Aura Ring, maybe a Fitbit Smart Scale, and I don't know, maybe a Garmin bike computer, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And all those devices, of course, they track and collect a huge amount of data, but the missing link is actually finding out insights about the data and combining them in a common layer, and really combine those health insights and give you personalized insights how to improve your health or where you're actually at. And I've joined that company as a freelancer in a pretty early stage where there was the first concept of the app. And for several months with the development team and the CEO and the product team, we designed the complete app experience, all the variable connections. So we've integrated like 300 variable connections, which is crazy. Wow. And then simplified everything. We did user experiments. I did design system things, handover. And the special thing about that project was like, I wasn't the lead as a designer for the complete process. So really from research and understanding the user pains until first concepts, wireframes, then also the high fidelity UI design, the prototyping, the handoff to the development team, the usability tests. So the complete stack, we're also covering that in the bootcamp, of product design. That was so great. And it really sharpened my understanding. Was like, oh, wow, that's really great. What such an idea and what starts with a little sketch on a piece of paper turns then out after a few months as a full-blown app in the App Store where people can make payments and connect wearable devices and stuff like that. And it really helps people in their everyday life. And then I was like, okay, that is a pretty special skill.
Huh. That's like, how do I explain it? It's a lot, mainly because like my first, like, I guess you could count as like UX UI design project. I think it was through this like academy called like Flex Academy, and they were doing this like Yeah, you know, like the guy Rand Segal, I think that's his name, Rand Segal, something like that.
Yeah. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's really cool. I love this video because he made one like on this like travel agency called Planco, and it was basically like it was like 3 days, 3 live streams on like how to create like I think it was you had a wireframe first on Figma, and you create your mood board, you find your inspirations, you analyze a project brief, and then once you're done with like the wireframing process and how you want your website design, you then put into like Webflow and you sort of like make it on there. And it was like that's like where I kind of thought like Figma was really cool, because like when I first started out, it just seemed like there's so many stuff you can do, and I just didn't know like where to start off at.
Oh yeah.
Like I thought like after my first project I'd get some of it, and then I would look at like videos on like Instagram Reels about like Figma shortcuts and stuff like that, and there's like so much other things I could do on Figma, and I was like, man, there's so much more stuff to do.
Shift A is the most important one.
Yeah, I was like, you could like do like a scroll thing, like infinite scroll and stuff. Like I forgot what it was called. I think one of them Xander from like Memorize, he made a video on it where like he taught like how to make like a little scroll window, but it was like kind of like a weird like 3D way. Yeah, I was like, huh, that's really cool. And he did it so quickly. I was like, man, I want to get to that point where I could just like make stuff like that so quickly. Because like now I look up every single thing on like Figma. Like, okay, how do I do this on Figma? How do I put like an image correctly on Figma and stuff? Like, I think it was putting it into a certain shape, and it seems like I'm such a novice right now, but it's so cool. And I think one of my friends, she's doing this competition for DECA's like a business club, and I think their I guess kind of like company is you can compare it to like kind of like Headspace, where it kind of comes like mental health, and they're making an app like they're making a like sort of app on it, and I was like, huh, like the things you can do and stuff. I really wanted to get someone like you on here because, you know, she would really like it. That like she could see like what you do, and especially with, like how you explain UX UI design, your projects, and even advice you may give. You know, I feel like she'd really appreciate it, and not just her, but like any other viewers, anyone else that like is interested in design. Because I think like I remember I went to this open house for my college, for like this college like nearby, and it's for like graphic design, but they changed it now to like graphic design and experience, where like it leans more into like user like experience and stuff like that. And I was like, huh, that's interesting, because like the times are changing now, so like there's a lot more to learn about like UX UI designs. At first it's like a pretty new field, but it's like ever changing, so like, it's pretty cool. And I guess like delving into like the next topic, I remember watching your video on LinkedIn where you talked about like your sort of hobbies. Like you're like a very kind of like nature person, and it's pretty cool because I also like nature. Like you like biking, you like hiking, you know, running, stuff like that. Even triathlon. I was like, a triathlon? Like that's pretty impressive, man. I have to know, that's pretty impressive. Like the time you have to put into that, and I respect you for that, man. Especially because I try to look up like the work hours for like UX UI design, and it was kind of like a lot of them were kind of like different. Some would say like, oh, you work over like 50, 60 hours. It's very intensive. And other sources would say like, oh, it's like around 40 hours, maybe less, depending on like the meetings and stuff like that. So how do you balance like the hobbies that you do, especially the extensive one like triathlon, and family, even friends, with what you do right now as a freelancer? Because I bet it must be very extensive, and like a lot of like time is put into it.
Yeah. I mean, having a good set of structures and routines definitely helps. For me, the good thing is I spend so much time at the screen, and then where I got really the most out of my energy, or most of my energy from, is like being outside. So not being at the desk, not staring at the screen. I think you can relate to that. I think that's kind of the illness of our generation. And then it started like with simple running. So actually I have a little routine in my day where the first hour of the day is like dedicated to myself and sports. So after waking up in the morning, try to get some decent stretches, and then it's like, okay, what kind of sports am I doing today? And it started a few years ago with only running, but then I got an injury while running, and then and the doctor was like, okay, maybe you can try it with cycling. And then I fell in love with cycling. And then I was like, okay, I'm doing running now, I'm doing cycling. Okay, what's missing now? Okay, swimming. And then in summer, the cool thing is I got a public pool around my corner. So it's a super, super cool pool. And then I went into swimming, did a course there, and I really fell in love with it. And I was like, okay, let's try a triathlon. And then I did like 1 or 2 competitions, and I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. And now I have like this big family of different sports, and whatever I feel like I have the most energy for and go for it. So there's no structured training plan or no Ironman plans or stuff like that. So it's only short distance triathlon, but it's a cool thing, and especially like it's a good way of balance. And regarding my friends and how I combine those hobbies with work and friends and stuff like this, I basically pulled all my friends into road cycling.
Oh man,
we're all doing epic trips
smart.
on the weekend together. And in the beginning, they were like, "Oh, I don't know." And then COVID hit, and we were all in lockdown. And was like, "Dude, now it's time to get a road bike because that's the only way you can get outside doing your sports."
That's smart.
And yeah, that was actually how it started. Now we're doing like. With 3 or 4 people on the weekends when it's sunny outside. We're basically out for like 5 or 6 hours riding our bikes. And that's pretty epic. And when I'm coming back, I'm feeling so energized. Of course, also super tired from all the climbs and all the road cycling
I
sessions.
bet, man.
But I feel so much energy for the next week. And I think that's really something to really look for, a hobby that gives you energy, and it's kind of not, maybe also some people get energy from doing Twitch streams or gaming and stuff like that. I'm also doing gaming. But for me, it's like, I get the most of my energy from being outside.
Huh. I mean, I can kind of relate to it because like now, I mean, with balancing school and also like I'm trying to like work on my portfolio stuff. I find that like playing with my, like I'll take like usually like a 15 and 30-minute break and try to play with my dogs for like a moment. And, you know, I play with them outside and stuff. They're very hyper dogs. So, like, it, you know, I'm running a lot with them and stuff. And usually it can get pretty tiring, but I just, my mind is clear. It's like if you, like, meditate and, like, you clear your mind and stuff like that. For some reason, it gives me that effect when I'm playing with my dogs. Like, my mind is just clear. And I can come back and I can just start working again, staring at a screen for another few hours, and then go to sleep. But it's a very calming process. And I bet, like, running and hiking must do that for you.
Especially definitely. Like, I mean, that's also one thing most people miss when it comes to like this productivity centric society we're living in. So like every single one is like, how can I get more out of my day? How can I be more productive and stuff like that? But willpower and your focus time is like, it's a limited resource you have throughout your day. And you have to admit that after some hours of deep work and focused work, your brain is like, just, I need a break, give you some energy. Then you really have to do something different. And that's what also one advice I'm giving to a lot of junior designers. Try to focus on less topics, because like a lot of people, they work on like 8 or 9 or 10 different projects. And I also did that mistake as I started freelancing. I had like 3 or 5 different projects at the time, and it was so stressful to handle all of these projects. Especially like the context switch and the opportunity costs that's come with it. You're like working on Monday, you're working on a fintech banking landing page. Then on Tuesday, you're working on a health tech startup app. Then on Wednesday, you're doing something completely different. And I think that's super difficult to have that mental switch in the brain and really try to focus on everything at once. And I think that does not work. Doing less and focusing on one particular thing. I think that's also super beneficial for advancing also your career and also deepening your skills.
Yeah, that's smart. Because I would admit I'm not perfect. I do procrastinate a lot. Like I know like when if I complete a certain part of the project, like okay, I finished the home section. I'm like, let me take a quick break and just scroll through Instagram for like just a little moment, and then it turns from like 5 minutes to like 30 minutes to an hour. I'm like, man, I just wasted so much time. I could have been finished with the second part already. And yeah, I understand what you mean. Like having like just certain like don't overtake too many projects, because it can be a handful. Like I'm not like a designer yet. I just, you know, I do stuff like on my own, just like I make my own stuff up. But yeah, thank you, because I don't want to run to that mistake later on, just taking too much projects. Like, freelancing seems like a pretty cool thing, although like it's very extensive on time and stuff, and you have to have like a really good structure. It does seem pretty cool, like kind of in a way, kind of being your own boss in a way, because you know you choose if you want to take those projects or not and stuff. But it's really interesting. And going on with that, because you kind of like already giving some good advice for like young designers and stuff. But I guess to be more specific, like let's say, how would you give advice for someone who is interested in UX UI design, and like what tools should they learn, or what? I know that there's no like best path they can be on, because you know everybody's path is different. But what's a pretty good like kind of like template, kind of like start off with when trying to go
Yeah.
into like UX UI design? Because even then, UX and UI are two like different things, and you know, like how would you kind of like structure that path for someone new?
Yeah, difficult question because there are so many answers you can give to that.
Yeah.
To make it short, doing a boot camp of Memorizely is of course the best approach. No, just kidding. So yeah, for me, so I've taught basically everything myself when it comes to UX and UI design, and for me, the starting point, and I think there was a really good one, was just trying things out. So for example, I've used some years ago, I was a heavy Twitter user. But there were also some issues with Twitter where I was like, I wish they fixed that. And I was like, wait a second, why don't I fix that for myself? And so that all that started, I just grabbed one of the billion design tools out there. And it really doesn't matter nowadays if you use like Sketch, Figma, Adobe XD, or some other design tool, because in the end, the tool will be only your tool. And what I always say is like, a fool with a tool is still a fool. So the tool in the design world does not really matter. Does not matter with what you're doing your designs. It's about the outcome and the end product. So don't worry about that at all. They're all quite comprehensible when it comes to their feature set and stuff like that. And then I would just like start doing. And if you end up like in a point where you don't know what you do next, Google it. I think with YouTube, we have so much knowledge ahead of us, and we're like, okay, how do I structure a frame so that it's nicely laid out? Or how do I design for dark mode? Or how do I create a button in Figma? I mean, there are so many resources out there, and just doing like, I'm a real believer in that concept of just-in-time learning, and I really would recommend gathering up all that knowledge without a practical approach. So I always was in the best position where I really learned the most things when I solved my own problems. And that was true for coding experiences that I did, but also it was true for the design world. So just grabbing an app or any application, or maybe you have an idea in your head that you really want to get to life, try design it. And as a starting point, I would also heavily focus on the design thinking method or design thinking approach in general. So really focusing on the problem first and being like, super obsessed about understanding the problem, the users, building empathy, really defining the problem set, and don't think about the solution too early. And then in the second half, when you really got like, okay, now I got the problem, now I really asked all the questions in my head and I really know what I should actually be building, then the ideas will like, they will flow out of you and you will like feel super creative. And in the end, you really have the solution in your head and you just have to bring it on the paper. And I think those are the best moments in design.
Huh. That's some wise words, man. Because like, I know like for Figma, like I love using Figma mainly because it's free. Like I don't have to pay for it, and it's really cool the stuff you can do. Or like it's all free and stuff. So like a really cool tool that I'm glad I have. But yeah, I like that quote though. Like a fool for tool is a fool, because like I guess like, sometimes I can rely too much on Figma, and I don't know. Like, I think like if I use Figma and I learn like every little setting thing, I will have everything for me. But they're still having that creative ideas that you need to have, and not really understanding the problem, and not just looking at it like, okay, I just like not looking at it. It's just like I don't know if it's the right analogy of it, but like looking at Facebook, like just kind of like coming up with a quick solution. That's it. But like really digging in time into it, because I mean that's really what it's all really about, just solving problems, which is also pretty cool about UX UI design. I guess going to like
there was also like I had also like this huge super cool book. It was kind of the biography of Johnny Ive, the chief designer of Apple in the past, and who also like designed the iPhone and the iPod and some Mac devices and stuff like that. And that is kind of my idol when it comes to the design world. And he was like, what is the most crucial skill as a designer is like to build that curiosity, not to really prototype everything super smoothly and build like amazing prototypes and slides and cool looking designs, but what makes the best designer out there is actually to build that curiosity and really going through the world and always asking questions. So why is that? How can I improve that? Why is that designed like that? And when you're transferring that like to the product design or to the software design world, it's so interesting because you see products from a completely different viewpoint. And it's like, okay, why did they actually design that list in that way? why is the button here right aligned? And it's so cool to really try to understand the decisions behind the product. And that, I think, that is what really makes a great designer, the thinking process and the building the empathy to users, and also trying to understand the problem and really uncovering the motivations and the beliefs behind a certain product or an idea or the task it's solving. And then all the UI design part, I think, building great looking products, that is like practice, practice, and practice.
So I guess another question would be like, how do you like sort of like balance that, like, because like with like UX and UI, I think, UX is more of like you're really solving the problem. It's more like logical, while UI is more like aesthetically pleasing. So how do you balance that aesthetics and practicality at the same time? How do you make sure you do like make it too practical and it's like not really aesthetically pleasing, or you're putting too much like aesthetics into it where it's not that practical? Like, how do you sort of balance that? Because I feel like with like a lot of like some projects, it can be more difficult to assess that.
Yeah, that's true. And I think really creating that balance, I think in the end, they have to go hand in hand, because on the one hand, you have to build good usable products, but on the other hand, you have also to build products that are visually pleasing and they are kind of beautiful or good looking. And when you combine those skills, it's like jackpot. And you're like super good as a designer. But that's a super tricky part. And it's also totally natural that every single one of us has different strengths and weaknesses also when it comes to the design and the UX UI world. What I really try to focus on is getting as many feedback as possible. So having a really tight feedback loop. Also when it comes to the problem understanding and also to the concept part, but also when it comes to the more visual UI design and high fidelity part. So in the first part where it's not really about the colors and the forms and the shapes, where it's all about wireframes. So I refer to it like this thick line wireframing. So really using the thickest pen you have in your house and trying to sketch your wireframes with it, because it will decrease the level of detail you can bring into your wireframes. And therefore you will get more honest feedback on your prototype, because when it feels like too polished, especially in that early phase, you get feedback like, why is that button blue? Green is my favorite color. And especially in the concept phase, that is not some kind of feedback you want to have in that concept phase. It's more like about understanding information architecture and stuff like that. And then in the second phase, you can really be more like usability testing and see if everything makes sense and if everything is looking good and if people like the design and stuff like that. And that's why I think in both of these phases, you really have to be super careful in what to look for and what you need to get one step further in the process. And that's why it's always super important to ask, okay, what is my goal in that specific phase of the product and of the project, and what information or what kind of feedback do I need to advance further?
And then going more towards like, I guess practicality, like inevitably, designers have to work with developers, and those relationships are very important to have. What do you suggest for like a UX UI designer to like what things should they learn about like developers in order to have like a better relationship? Like, should they learn like a language that's used like in web design in order to have like
questions? Should designers code?
Should designers code? Because I mean, like I think to myself, like, to make all this sort of cool stuff. Like I remember this one time I saw this website on Webflow that I think it was like for Honda, and it was like a racing like kind of like website. It looked so cool. But I'm assuming you really can't make that like just a designer. Like there had to be a lot of code involved into it. And like, how do you, I don't know, like how do you improve those relationships in order for it to work well? Like what should a UX designer learn about?
Yeah. So from my professional experience, what is super beneficial is when you when you have an understanding of the technical complexity. I think that brings so much value in your work as a UX and also as a UI designer, because when starting out in that design phase, you can also kind of estimate the technical complexity of the design, and there are no big surprises, because nowadays when you're like on dribble.com, you see like super crazy designs, but in the end they're like so expensive to build, and it's kind of ridiculous hard to really code them. I think, should designers code? I wouldn't say so, but understanding a certain technological complexity will definitely bring you further. Just do everything with auto layout and Figma, and I think you're good to go. But other than that, I mean, especially when you have like a side project or working on your own little portfolio site, try to build that on your own with kind of a front end tool, or with Next.js or Tailwind CSS or stuff like that, because especially those are tools that are so easy to learn, and there's so much knowledge out there, especially with React and Next.js. It's so easy to also get that like component based atomic design approach that we might have in our Figma files and bring that to your front end tooling, and just use that little portfolio site as your personal playground. I'm also doing that with my website, where I'm always trying out some technologies and stuff like that. And it's kind of my safe place in the internet, my little corner of the internet. So that's why I also like that place so much. And it really teaches you a lot of skills, and that you don't have to be on the same level as a front-end developer. But if you have some kind of understanding the box model, understanding the complexity of a layout you might want to create, I think that creates so much benefits for you that you really can communicate in a better way with developers. And that also makes sure that in the end that designs or products get built the way the design team intended it. And yeah, then in the end, everybody's happy. And I think that's the best part of the product team then.
Thank you. That's good though, because ever since I've like, I guess searched up like a lot of like kind of content creators that work in UX UI design, I get so many like stuff recommended, and like some people create like cool stuff on Figma and it looks really cool, but then I see the comments and people are like, oh, this can never happen in an actual website, or this would be really frustrating for a developer. There's no way a developer would make this because it would not work at all. And even I have like made stuff like that, because I remember when working on this like travel agency website, like it was just like a personal thing. I was trying to make the team section, I was trying to make it like into like kind of like leaves, because it was like kind of nature focused. I was trying to make like cool like leaves for the team and stuff. But then when I went to like Webflow and tried to make it, I was like, man, how do I make this? And I'm like, I'm gonna just give up and just try something else, like adapt it into something else, because there's no way I could actually make that unless I had to import code and stuff. But yeah, it's really cool to learn, because I want to make sure like I want to design really cool stuff, like aesthetically pleasing stuff, but also have practicality to it, and understand like, okay, a developer could probably make this or not, and understand it early on.
That's the balance.
Yeah, the balance
always
part.
About balance.
And I guess going forward, like kind of like back to you, right now you're doing a lot of like freelance work, and you're working a little bit like with Memorizely. Kind of like, what are your future goals? Like, let's say maybe 5 years from now, where do you see yourself working in a new company, or maybe starting your own, or like, what do you see yourself, man? Winning more triathlons,
Definitely not. I think I'm a better designer than triathlete. But yeah. So probably I will continue doing freelance work from now on, because I think for me currently it feels right. But there is the possibility that I might join another design team as a full-time employee. So that could also happen. I try to not plan everything in my life, and also see how things are going, and go with the flow and see where life brings you. So it also brought me to Memorizely and to that podcast. So good decisions that were not planned. And let's see. So as a designer, I have one little dream, and I really want to fulfill that dream in that next 5 years. And that is like, so I'm using a lot of public transportation, and also riding a lot with the train and stuff like that. And when I'm in the train, I always look above people's shoulders on their smartphones. It's like a little illness I have as a designer. And on one day, I really want to see their application that was designed by my team and me. And that would make me really happy. Cool. I try to fulfill that dream in the next 5 years.
That's really cool, huh? That's really cool, because like, huh? Now that I'm thinking about, like, damn, that would be pretty cool to have a project, and then like you're on a train, you're on a way to work, and you just see someone like scrolling through your website, like, oh, I designed that, like you don't tell them, but like in your mind, you're like, oh, I designed that. It's really cool, huh?
Yeah,
that's cool,
that
man.
That would be awesome. Yeah.
Nah, you'll complete it, man. I've seen like what you do with like Memorizely and stuff, and you seem like a really cool guy. I mean, you understand both worlds really well and stuff, so you'll probably do it in less than 5 years, man. You got it.
Thank you, man. I
Yeah, no
appreciate
problem.
it.
And I guess kind of like to wrap it up. I guess, man, I almost forgot. Is there any sort of like recommendations you would give for like a UX UI designer? Because I know you mentioned like the tools. You mentioned some really cool tools to use,
Yeah.
especially learning like back end development and stuff like that. Really gain that knowledge from it. What about like bugs? Are bugs, because when I'm thinking of like UX UI design, I'm thinking like more like, okay, this is very like new, like I won't get anything from books. You know, I would have to like look at a course or like online stuff. Is there any like sort of like design
Yeah.
books that you think that
Oh,
they can still hold value now? You know, because I feel like there might be some out there that
think
could
so.
really have design, like really have value to it. Or
Yeah.
like anything you've seen that
There are some-
you would recommend someone to like kind of look into to really understand like the like what design really is, or kind of have like I don't know,
Yeah,
like,
there are some
information about it.
There are some classic ones, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
the design of everyday things probably is one of the biggest influences there. Also, when it comes to software and product development in general, the Hooked model by Nir Eyal is also a great book, especially when it comes down to building products and also understanding products. Like, for example, when you read like the Hooked model, you really understand why you spend so much time on Instagram, and you see the product from a completely different point of view. Super interesting.
Oh, I'm looking into that then.
And he also, it's super, super great. And then I think also another book that really shaped my work as a designer was really like the biography by Johnny Ive.
Johnny Ive.
That is super, super, super great because he was like, he's just such a special mind and builds products in such a unique way. So you don't really learn how to nudge pixels to the right direction, but you learn how to think. And especially for the design part, I think that's the methods and the mindset is like for me the foundation of everything. And then you can build up with sharpening your craftsmanship as a designer. So that's why I really would recommend like more in the foundational books, and also things like about product psychology and stuff like that. So for example, there's also one book by Richard Thaler that is called Nudge. I actually also wrote my master thesis on that book because it's super interesting, and it shows the subtle nudges in our everyday life and also in digital products that shape our decision making. That is super, super interesting, and it brings like a more psychological approach to that design world. But that's also a fact that is so true. User experience does not happen only on the screen; it also happens in our heads. So that's why also the psychological background is super, super important.
Thank you. Man, I'm gonna rewatch this like when I'm editing stuff and just write down everything you said, like the books and tools things. Like I do not want to forget. I think I've heard of that first one, the design of that first book you mentioned. I feel like I've heard about it because I know like I've looked through like books before and I didn't know which one to trust. Like I don't know if they were so credible, or, you know, things change like all the time and stuff. So for that first book, I feel like I've heard about it, but I'll definitely get to all of them. Thank you, man. I really appreciate you being here.
It's a design classic. It's a design classic book. The design
really?
of everyday things. Design of everyday things. It's the classic design book. Actually, it also has like this one chapter on Norman doors, and it explains you why you sometimes see doors that you feel like you have to push, but the door says no, you have to pull me. It's super,
cool.
super funny, and it's a very cool book. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, now I remember because that yellow cover. I knew like there was like a yellow cover.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember. I haven't read the book, but I remember seeing it like as like a recommendation for like design books. I'm gonna read it. It's really cool. And also got like I don't read as often, so I'm gonna definitely need to read some books like that I can double dip on and stuff. But yeah, man, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate the time you take right now, because I know you really have a lot of work to do with like freelancing. You're working at Memrisely. Also, you're all the way in Germany and stuff. It's like a different time zone and stuff. And I really do appreciate it. And also, man, you're a really cool guy. I mean, even like when I first like texted you, like inviting you to like the podcast and stuff like that, you seem such a cool dude. Like on text message, I'm like, man, I can't wait to meet this guy like through like screen or whatever, because he seems like a really cool dude. And I love your hobbies, by the way. They're really cool hobbies, man. And I might even think of like cycling, because cycling seems pretty cool. I kind of have I used to do cross country and stuff, so like I kind of like running a little bit, not too much, but yeah. Thank you, man. Thank you for being here. I hope you have a good one, man.
Nice. Thank you for having me.